Lee,
All right, Vince, go ahead. Introduce yourself. Yep.
thank you for having me. My name is Vince Gaydarzhiev. I'm the CEO of Alcatraz AI. Started the company about 5 years ago. Out of my experience at NVIDIA, used to work on graphics chips that went into Tesla, and then moved to Apple, where I led the Face AD team that eventually integrated the module to come out into the iPhone 10. And that's how the whole idea of Alcatraz started. How we can give us the same kind of passive, frictionless, easy to use experience, not only on mobile, but for the physical world. We were walking around the Apple campus. We were looking at badges and guards, asking people to badge in, so there is no tailgating going on. And we decided, well, we can do better with technology finally. That's the story of the company. 5 years later, we have a product out, and I'm happy to discuss how our product with AI fits within the industry.
Wonderful. Super interesting background and story. And I've gotten to get to know you a bit through this process, and I've enjoyed doing that. So I love the passion around it. So if you would, I couldn't think of a better person to ask the question. Really, if we sort of, baseline a little bit on, we hear the word artificial intelligence a lot. We see it as a mega trend, and it gets a lot of discussions. You really see a lot of it from a video standpoint, or that conversation happens to happen a lot, right? But with this, we're seeing it in access control as a whole. So if you could just define for me, like, how do you define how do you define artificial intelligence?
Well, so I define it as everyone else, which is the ability of a computer to do tasks autonomously, tasks that usually are done by humans because they need human intelligence. AI many times should be involved to process those tasks automatically and give you with high accuracy results. So you can remove the human out of the equation and actually make the decision making faster and more accurate along the process.
Okay, so the processing of the information, what's interesting is you use the terms around accuracy as well as sort of being a core pillar, more or less, of what you would expect out of it. So if I was to take the sort of what it is, and I would look to the applications of it, can you speak a little bit to me about, all right, so I take that big idea of what it is, and how do I apply it, and what are some of the ways that it manifests into things as just a normal person in the world would see interacting with artificial intelligence?
Yeah, so it really depends on the industry and the use case. We're many decades away from a common AI system that can do it all. Right now, everyone is focused on creating AI-specific algorithms and applications that are very specific, that are processing very specific tasks. They train, improve, iterate models to improve accuracy and speed, but it's very specific per the application, per the company, per the product, right? So in our industry, AI is used extensively in video, as you mentioned. Computer vision is one aspect how you do artificial intelligence by doing body detection, face detection, body tracking, face recognition. That's all a part of artificial intelligence, right? So from the perspective of, let's say, VMS, you're going to be able to count people, look at how people go around campus. Maybe if you're concerned about some individual, you're going to be able to quickly find them or go back in history and see where they've been. You can use artificial intelligence. So, in our case, not only to do face recognition, but also tailgating detection and potentially doing blocking unidentified people to get into spaces that otherwise you would need guards to manually block them or manually check them in. That's all a part of computer vision, but it's powered by AI to create a very high accuracy result based on use case.
Yeah, but what's interesting is if I could go back a little bit on what you said, and that's sort of a key point that I've not heard. And again, I don't pretend to be an expert in this, but you mentioned, like, it sounds like, and tell me if I heard you wrong, but that right now we're at the maturity stage where people are sort of creating specific to a point on AI versus a framework. That am I safe to assume what you're talking about is that at some point there's sort of this pool of AI that people tap into versus where it's a point to point now? Is that like a framework, a platform? Is that a fair way to view it? Is
Um,
that what you mean?
so there is no way you can train AI as a whole for all use cases in each industry or for each product. If you have multiple use case, multiple tasks, you have to train your neural nets per that task, per that use case, using a lot of data, right? At some point, and we see that trend in video again, you can add multiple algorithms under a platform to then give you the value, the extended value of having AI or computer vision to process multiple things at once, right? But those multiple things at once, those tasks have been trained separately using separate algorithms, maybe even separate frameworks for training, right? At some point, you can be adding under the same platform more and more, but still in this generation of AI in the next probably 10, 20, 30 years, it will all be industry specific and even product specific,
Okay.
use case specific.
So, but could it be safe to say though, could a day could come? So if we're early in it, right? So, and we need time, it tells me that like a company like yourself who's deep into it in 5 years, I don't know what the time frame is of, of what good looks like, and we'll get into that a little bit, but you could see a day, I guess, at some point where there possibly where a company like yourself could be an AI engine for access control or security or the rest, and really people pipe into you. Where am I safe to assume that we're
Exactly.
at that stage where you need to make the rock, which we'll get into what that is in a little bit. You need that so you can train your system. Is that so? There's like a chicken and an egg thing that has to happen here a bit, and is that, am I
Yeah,
totally
yeah.
crazy?
So definitely you need data, and to train to achieve some kind of accuracy to even deploy something even as a prototype in a use case. To get that data, you need to collect it somehow using sensors, using open source tool sets, and at some point you're going to be ready to deploy. And while being deployed, you can keep collecting data, of course, based on privacy, security, customer recognition, and keep training and keep improving, right? But you still need the data first, which is the chicken and the egg. To get the data, which is what our company had to do, and we had the same issue in the beginning. To get the data, you still need to have something deployed, something to collect that data first to even create your product, right? At some point, I don't know if it's 5 or 10 years, you will be well trained. Let's say Google is doing that with self-driving cars with Waymo, right? They're collecting a bunch of data, but they're creating the platform of self-driving cars that then they'll license out into other car manufacturers, versus what Tesla is doing, collecting data for their own purposes only without creating the platform for other people, other companies to tap into, right?
Yeah, it's the
So
wall
similar,
garden
yeah,
approach
yeah.
to
So
the, yeah.
similar idea in access control right now. A lot of companies are collecting data, they're training, there's some amazing use cases, but it's only for their own purposes. They're only to train and improve their own product instead of collecting and training and then making those algorithms, that platform available for other companies to use. Uh, with some exceptions. For example, as a horizontal field, facial recognition has a lot of companies that are just creating algorithms, but without an actual product, right? So many companies are taking those algorithms and maybe augmenting them with other algorithms or integrating them within their product to go to market faster without needing to have the same facial recognition team and data to then have an actual end-to-end product for their customers, right? But yeah, so if you have one specific use case and an algorithm that already exists, maybe an open source algorithm or maybe a company that will license that algorithm, then you may not even need to train something yourself. If you're trying to now be the platform with multiple algorithms, multiple use cases, all in one product, then it gets tricky. And especially in physical access control, the accuracy, I'm going to be discussing that later. The accuracy needs to be very high, right? It's not something like a hiring agent based on AI where they're gonna give some advice to the hiring manager on the applicants, but the hiring manager will make the final choice themselves. In physical security, you need to have high accuracy, which means a lot more customization that needs to be done on the hardware side, on the software side, to go over the threshold of whatever it is, 99.99%.
Yeah, there's a need, a life safety side of this that makes it a little bit different than making a decision of what toppings I want on my pizza. So yeah, it's a little bit different.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's speaking to the point of like when we get there. So when we get there, what does good look like? And then at that point, maybe I'll put two questions together for you. So what does it look like when it's good? And then at what point do you think the real value would be delivered to the mass market versus some of the niche areas, like say just in high security, but overall, like I can imagine entering into stadiums, entering into theaters, entering into every place, that ability. So that's beyond just the high security side. So what does good look like? And at what point do you think the value will come back to the general public?
Yeah, so again, it really depends on the industry and the application, and how crucial it is for the system to perform without minimal errors. There'll always be errors, especially in the next 10, 20 years in most tasks that AI is involved in. Obviously, if human life is involved, accuracy needs to be very high. For example, in autonomous cars, autonomous vehicles, everyone has heard of level 1 to level 5 of self-driving. To get to level 5, it's a very, very hard problem to solve, but it's a needed problem to solve before we're able to just have our hands off the wheel, right? In security, it's a little different. Although in security, you still need to have very high accuracy. Uh, Human lives most of the time are not involved as a death and life kind of a scenario. But the value needs to be there. The pros need to far outweigh the cons before you deploy not only a prototype in a lab or in a small setting, but mass deploy a product or multiple products in the field, right? So in the case of Alcatraz, we spent years collecting data, not only to do accurate facial recognition with anti-spoofing, but to be the first ones to develop anti-tailgating solution, heavily based on AI, heavily based on data that you cannot find anywhere else but to collect it yourself. But our accuracy based on our testing needed to be very high. It's never going to be 100%, but it needed to be very high. Maybe if I have to put it in the terms of self-driving cars, at least level 4 in self-driving before you deploy to the field, right? And you can do a lot of shortcuts and checkpoints along the way to increase the accuracy. But the value is there, and there is value in other products right now on the market that are being deployed. There's clear value right now in physical security, especially using video, because video is the most mature field in AI anywhere, but especially in physical security, and especially as a platform that sits on top of the VMS.
Yeah, so it's interesting because what you talked about, and if you're equating it to, and I understand why, to the autonomous vehicle side. I mean, that level of R&D we don't normally see in our industry. Frankly, it's an industry that's based off of iterating off of existing platforms that have been around since the 1970s, and do that. So when you look at it, it does feel like you're taking a different approach, and frankly, this use case around AI is probably needed. So I think it's great that you're doing that. So talk to me a little bit about like, how do you approach R&D, technology, your products, as an industry, as a company within an industry that doesn't normally do that?
Yeah, so we are very engineering focused. Very engineering focused. There are very hard problems to solve with insufficient data so far that we have to collect ourselves. And unfortunately, the industry is still a little close guarded. Each of the end users or partners, understandably, they have concerns about privacy, security. Some some opportunities, some companies may be okay with a cloud-based solution and maybe okay to share data, but most, especially the large enterprise and of course government, will not allow to share any data, even if it's anonymous, even if it's stripped out of any metadata, they will not, which makes it very hard to then collect based on a lot of different use cases, a lot of different environments, and train and improve. Versus something what Google is doing and Tesla with their self-driving cars, which is they deploy hardware in the field, people buy it, but they kind of automatically accept the minimal privacy, unrestrictions that those car companies are creating to share real-time data to improve and train to eventually get to this level 5 self-driving future, right? So in our industry, it's a little hard. You have to do a lot of it. You have to train first, get data and train a little more manually. But there are ways, and we are approaching on our side at least level 4, probably level 4.5 in tailgating. Very hard. It took a lot of years, especially not many companies in security are not even as big as Google or Tesla, but 1/10 of their size to be able to afford such a large scale training to get to the accuracy needed.
Yeah, no, that's I can imagine so, and it's from an industry that's used to, technology, you build it, you set it, you leave it, and then it works, to this idea that it sort of has a learning mechanism, that it gets better as it goes, is very different. So talk to me a little bit about also then, if I was to take a look at the Alcatraz rock as an expression of this AI in a physical port, right? Or it's a
Yeah,
learning device. Like our industry calls it a reader, which I'm
sure.
sure makes you want to break out in hives when you hear that. But talk to me a little bit about, like, what is it? What does it represent? What is it like? The difference between what it is today to tomorrow? Like, talk to me a little bit about the way that you look at that product.
So physical security is turning into a new era. That era is based on edge computing, based on AI, based on software as a service models instead of just purely buy one time and forget about it, and also cloud. It will take some time for those to be deployed, for people to agree on privacy and security, especially in Europe. It's a little easier because they have GDPR. In the US, there are some states that have their own legislation, but there is nothing on federal level. But at some point, you will get there in the US and around the world. We represent all of it. We represent everything that a reader is, uh, uh, a legacy reader is, but much more. Since we do all the computing on the edge, everything is done using neural nets. It learns by itself, even if the customer doesn't consent to share any data with Alcatraz, and data is anonymous and stripped out of any metadata. Uh, the the product by itself, even if it's in an on-prem solution environment, can train by itself and keep learning by itself, but only for that company and not as a whole for all the users of Alcatraz around the world. Um, this is where we are innovating around. How do we provide more value, more features, more services to our customers every month, every quarter, every year, without them changing anything in their environment and without them needing to buy anything more? It just works. Just like I keep using Tesla as an example, but Tesla was the first company that had a self-updating, substantial self-updating OS that kept adding features and features to the point where a car that was bought 5 years ago, even though it looks the same, has so much more value brought into it by just software updates that some customers are waiting for that software update to happen before they buy. Many customers are pre-buying the cars, but they keep seeing what else is coming up without them needing to buy anything else. Same idea with Alcatraz, and that's where the industry is moving slowly but surely.
Yeah, no, it's a byproduct of some of the other trends that you see in computing that are what make it exciting to see that our systems can actually look forward, not just in the past. So as you know, if you think about with how COVID, the impact that it's had, if our systems could have responded to that in a little bit different manner than it did now, you know, it'd be interesting to see how we can ebb and flow as the use cases they do change.
Exactly. Imagine you had an access control product anywhere around the world before COVID that can be self-updating, that have the sensors needed and the edge processing to do more than just access control. Then COVID hits, and what you need throughout COVID is some kind of an access control based on factors like, do you wear a mask? Are you going into a space that has more people than it should? And imagine you have a product that can be self-updating, that can add those features to the point where all those companies that banned employees to come to the office and that put guards to manually check for masks and manually check for a temperature and manually let people in after some person gets out of the room, so there are only X amount of people in the room. Imagine you have a product that can autonomously do all those things by just a software update, with the company doing anything else.
Yeah, no, I think it's coming. I mean, that's it's you know it's interesting to see. You look at cloud architecture sort of had its moment through this because you know back in the day when I was working for a cloud-based access control system, like we had to educate people on what it was and the value on it. And it was sort of like, I don't know if we need it. Then COVID happens, it's sort of like, yeah, I think you can see why you needed it. And this is the same type of idea that
Same idea.
Telling more of the stories around how systems can respond to situations is a unique value proposition that our industry really frankly should have, because the situations that from a security standpoint, they're not static. It's not like the same people are walking in with the same knife in the same time and doing right. We have a dynamic industry. The products need to respond dynamically to that as well. That's interesting. So as we talk about the market a little bit, can you expand a little bit on like, how do you see the opportunities that are before you? How do you see integration partners, the channel? Like how does, especially too, again, you're dealing with a product that's a little out there for some people that are really based off of technologies from 100 years ago. But how do you view your fit with that and how they fit with you?
Yeah, so I think the industry is turning a corner now, becoming much more open-minded to service models based on value add throughout time. The industry and the partners in the industry, the system integration partners, have a great opportunity to get in early, help deploy that smart hardware as a service product to their existing client base, and reap the benefits month by month, year by year, where everyone wins. The end user with a lot more better algorithms, a lot more features that come through time, the system integration partners that hopefully maintain those products as little as possible to almost nothing, but they keep reaping the benefits of the service model. And of course, the vendors, the product companies that are providing those features, that are head down, working, developing, engineering-wise, new features, training models to improve, to increase accuracy, to extend the ROI. I think the industry is recognizing the return on investment on things like, okay, maybe so far I had a turnstile or a door lock or a guard standing outside to manually check, manually just monitor the situation around the main doors or even entry points. Okay, now maybe I don't need this person. Maybe I couldn't have afforded 1,000 guards because I have 1,000 doors on campus, but now I can deploy 100, 1,000 smart products, IoT products that can do that can give you the ROI in comparison to 1, 2, 3, 5 guards, but still do most, if not almost all of the um, repetitive work autonomously, right? And this is the future. The future of AI is autonomous AI. Autonomy means not only uh, performing tasks by itself, but also keep learning and improving by itself, even on-prem, even without being online, even without human intervention. And this is a very hard problem to solve, not only in our industry, but everywhere in all um, industries, in all products, in all tasks. And it's a little harder in our industry because a lot of the data is usually congregated, collected within the end user and not shared. But still, this is the future, and that's where the industry is going.
Yeah, no, I think the enlightening moment on my end from this conversation, which when I look at it, is that idea of it growing and getting better, which is an entirely different paradigm shift and a way to view the system, to where it's actually too, when you make an investment, sort of, if I'm a customer looking at buying systems, the differentiation of saying, you know, the system that you're putting in now, is it outdated the second you put it in? Or are you purchasing and working with a system that the day you put it in is probably the day that it's youngest, and it's only going to get better as it continues to go? That's an interesting point of view to take a look at, sort of the value of AI. And as we talk about it as an industry, getting away from just saying the term AI and everyone being like, yeah, I want AI and we need AI. And whenever you ask anybody, it's sort of like, oh yeah, let me tell you about video. There's a real place for it in the access control side. And it's going to take some time, the training end of it. I'm curious to
I
understand. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I completely agree. And some companies I feel are over exaggerating their use of AI, maybe misrepresenting what AI means. But overall, as we go through the next years, there'll be legislation and specific use case based proofs how AI helps and what real AI is, not only in our industry, but anywhere in all industries. What I want to note is uh, privacy and security is very important, especially in our industry, especially if you deal with things like biometrics. Even if you strip any metadata, any PPI, you still need to be very careful around security, privacy, encryption, right? Not a lot of companies are doing the right thing. Uh, uh, I think end users and system integration partners, they need to be uh, very rigorous in how they pilot new products, test them, make sure those products are well certified with what's needed. For example, in our industry, you have not only SOC 2, you have ISO 27001, you can get certified with GDPR. Those smart products that are coming out right now, they all must go through a penetration testing, third party company that will evaluate how the hardware performs, not only on a high level, but they'll try to jailbreak the hardware, the software, the cloud, the on-prem, to make sure nothing can get out. This is a very hard problem to have. I'm sure you've heard of iPhone being jailbroken and Android devices being jailbroken, even those large companies with not super complex products. There's still users that are able to get in, right? Not millions of users are trying, like on the iPhone, but still, our industry, uh, the the biggest milestone in our industry is to create high security, not only for the end users, not only for the employees or people at home, but also for the companies that are deploying those products or the physical security admins that are vouching for those products in front of their leadership before deployment. It's a very tough problem to crack, and I just want to warn that not a lot of companies are doing the right thing yet, as there is no exact legislation, federal level, on how we can account for it.
Yeah, so it's the early days, which is definitely, you
Very
got
early
people
days.
And it's not sort of a lick and stick type technology, just to sort of say, yeah, I've got this thing, and we put it on there, kind of like we saw with the thermal and fever cameras during
Exactly.
COVID. You know, it's
Everyone has read the IPVM articles about thermal, and not only accuracy associated with that, but there are actually huge health risks by not being accurate when you do thermal, right? And there need to be third-party companies like IPVM, which I really respect and love how they do evaluation and testing to really make sure who the right players are in the market.
Yeah,
because
well,
that can
very
go.
good. No, I appreciate the thoughts around that as well. So cool. I think we'll leave it at
Cool.
that. A lot of great information. It's exactly the type of stuff I was looking for on the AI side. So Vince, as always, I appreciate every time we get an opportunity to speak. I learn a little bit more. So thank you very much for taking the time to do this, and look
Always
forward
happy
to
to
doing it
chat,
again.
Lee.
Yeah,
Looking forward
absolutely.
to it.
Thank you.